Mount Sinai is the mountain at which the Ten Commandments were given to Moses by God, according to the book of Exodus in the Hebrew Bible. The location of Mount Sinai, described in the Bible, remains disputed. The high point of the dispute was in the mid-19th century. Saudi Arabia just announced a terrifying discovery. Mount Sinai is one of the most sacred locations in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Miners carved Egyptian hieroglyphs and drawings into the rock of the Sinai Desert 5,000 years ago as a way of marking the area as owned by Egypt, a researcher says. The people carving the symbols were literally making their mark on the world. No doubt, the most famous location for Mount Sinai is a gigantic granite peak in the south-central region of the Sinai Peninsula between Israel and Egypt, which rises to 7,497 feet, 2,285 meters, above sea level. And even though scholars differ as to the exact route the Israelites took during their exodus from Egypt, this location has long been accepted as the actual site by many scholars. Pilgrims, scholars, and hermits have frequented this site extensively for thousands of years, with the earliest recorded visits of Eusebius of Caesarea during the 4th century AD, and Egeria's pilgrimage during her 381 to 384 AD travels in the region. During the early Messianic and Christian era, the region was often visited by mystics and pilgrims seeking spiritual enlightenment, possibly including Paul the Apostle, and the famous monastery of St. Catherine was built at the foot of the mountain in 530 AD. Maintained by the Orthodox Church of Mount Sinai, this is possibly the world's oldest continuously inhabited Christian monastery, containing a library of ancient manuscripts, which included a 4th century Greek Codex Sinaiticus of the Bible, which was moved to the British Museum. The hieroglyphs and drawings, rediscovered in 2012, are helping clarify some history of the ancient civilization and correcting some earlier assumptions about a queen, a pharaoh, and the founding of the city of Memphis, says an article about the hieroglyphs in Live Science. Personnel from an ancient mining expedition are believed to have made the 60 or so carvings, which date between 5,200 and 4,800 years old, at a site called Wadi Amira. One symbol carved into the desert is for Queen Neith-Hotep, a regent to a young pharaoh whose name was Jur. She ruled Egypt about 5,000 years ago, thousands of years before the more famous Hatshepsut and Cleopatra VII, says Live Science. Contrary to Christian traditions, the Jewish views regarding the exact location of Mount Sinai are quite vague. In fact, once the Torah, the law of Moses, was given to Israel on Mount Sinai, there is only one more biblical mention of the mountain in the book of 1 Kings chapter 19, which describes how the prophet Elijah, when escaping from evil Queen Jezebel, found refuge in a cave on the slopes of Horeb, the mountain of God, which is identified as Mount Sinai. In Elijah's account, the mountain is, once again, the site of a great ecological drama, including fire, storm, and an earthquake. Only this time, God reveals to the prophet that he doesn't dwell in these outward powerful manifestations, similar to the dramatic events of the receiving of the law, but rather that he can be found in the stillness of the inner human spirit. Jebel Makla has blackened peaks as if scorched by the sun or fire, and lies near Nuevo Beach, where scientists have found land paths underneath the water, where God would have parted the waters for Moses and the Israelites. Though they were followed by Egyptians in chariots, when the Israelites reached land on the other side of the water, the sea consumed the Egyptians. A chariot-like shape was found in coral in the area, according to Swedish scientist Dr. Lennart Mahler, who noted to the outlet that the metal and wood had long ago disintegrated. On the way from the beach to the possible Mount Sinai is a large, split rock with signs of water erosion, despite being in the midst of a desert. Although the archaeologically and historically relevant character of Har Karkam as a Bronze Age holy mountain was immediately evident, at first, no relation was considered between this high place and Mount Sinai. Until Har Karkam's research, no reasonable doubt met the conventional belief that the Exodus as described in the Bible occurred in the 13th century BC, and that the biblical Mount Sinai was the mountain at whose foot the Byzantine monastery of St. Catherine was built. Therefore, if indeed the 13th century must be the date of the Exodus, Har Karkam could hardly have been Mount Sinai. After claiming in 1978 to have discovered the Red Sea crossing at Nuwaba in the Gulf of Aqaba, the eastern branch of the Red Sea, Wyatt concluded that the real Mount Sinai must be located east of the path of the miraculous Red Sea crossing in the territory of western modern-day Saudi Arabia. The best possibility, Wyatt thought, was Jebel al-Lawz because it presented the highest peak in the entire western Saudi Arabian mountain range. In 1984, Wyatt and his two sons illegally crossed into Saudi Arabia to explore and photograph the area, but they were captured, their films confiscated, and they actually were jailed for 78 days by the Saudis as Israeli spies. Wyatt later returned to Saudi Arabia legally on a mission of treasure hunting, looking for the Mountain of God, as well as for Egyptian treasures hidden in the region and the leftovers of Pharaoh's huge army, which he believed could be found at the bottom of the Red Sea. Subsequent delegations and researchers followed in the coming years, producing impressive results, yet, as most scholars agree, these are still speculative and lack definitive and indisputable archaeological proofs. Wyatt's research points to a large pile of granite rocks about a quarter of a mile from the base of the mountain with petroglyphs of bovine, bulls, cows, and oxen on it, quoting a Saudi archaeologist from Riyadh University as saying that these were Egyptian-style cows and bulls who had never been found anywhere else in Saudi Arabia, Wyatt surmised, though it was later questioned by other scholars that this was the great altar of Israel at the foot of Mount Sinai in Saudi Arabia, and possibly the one mentioned in the Golden Calf story. Until the early 20th century, Sinai was under the control of the Ottoman Empire. In 1906, it became part of British-controlled Egypt when the Turkish government yielded to British pressure to hand over the peninsula. The border imposed by the British runs in an almost straight line from Rafah on the Mediterranean Sea to Taba on the Gulf of Aqaba. In 1948, Egyptian forces passed through Sinai on their way to invade the newly created State of Israel, based on a United Nations mandate dividing the land between the Jews and the Christian and Muslim inhabitants. Under the terms of the 1949 Armistice Agreement, Sinai, together with the Gaza Strip, remained under Egyptian control, although parts of it were demilitarized. In 1956, Egypt used its control of Sinai to impose a blockade on the Israeli port of Eilat. In 1967, Egypt reinforced its military presence in Sinai, renewed the blockade on Eilat, and on May 16 ordered the UNEF out of Sinai. In the following Six-Day War, the Egyptian army was defeated and Israel took control of the entire peninsula. In 1979, Israel and Egypt signed a peace treaty in which Israel agreed to transfer all control over Sinai to Egypt. Subsequently, Israel pulled out of Sinai in several stages, ending in 1982. The Israeli pullout involved the destruction of several Israeli settlements, including the town of Yamit in northeastern Sinai. In addition, some biblical scholars suggest that the Apostle Paul, while teaching the Galatian Christians about God's covenants, indicated in Galatians chapter 4 verse 25 that Mount Sinai was in Saudi Arabia, the land of Midian, which seems to support Wyatt's claims. The fact is that the Galatians reference could be used to support the notion that Mount Sinai is in Saudi Arabia, only if the apostle was looking at a modern political map. So that's it. Please like, share, and comment your thoughts below if you liked this video. Remember to subscribe to see our next video. Stay safe, and we will be back soon with another video.